I think at our peak during that time, we were making probably about $7,000 a month gross.
What's up, guys? Today we have special guest Steve Fierros. Steve has been in real estate for 20 years. He's currently a home inspector and an investor. He's inspected over 2,000 homes and currently has over $80 million in assets under management as a general partner. He's done fix and flipping, short-term rentals, wholesales, BRRRRs, everything you can imagine. And just welcome to the show, bro.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, Daniel.
I mean, it's exciting. We kind of connected, I think, at the last WealthCon, just chatting about our stories and just seeing kind of the cool things that you've accomplished in your real estate investing career. But also, I think one of the cool things that really stood out to me was you figured out a way to basically live for free. The whole house hacking concept. And I think as a brand new real estate investor, that's like, we were talking about this, that's like the best strategy to kind of get started.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people that listen to Dave Ramsey and, you'll listen to personal finance and all that stuff. It's all great.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's like, oh, hey, cut out the coffee, cut out the Starbucks, cut out this, kind of the smaller stuff. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, that's not going to make that big of a difference. That's not going to put that big of a dent into your, personal monthly expense. So our goal, when we were looking for, the last primary that we bought or, that particular property was, look, my absolute minimum going into this next purchase is going to be, I want to live for free.
Okay.
Right.
I
So,
like that.
Here in Hawaii, of course, like, as a lot of properties here are set up or have the potential to be like multi-generational, where you have like kind of a multi-family type setup, even though it's a residential property.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I think what do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, if you're buying a house,
like a single family house,
just a residential house, but that has the potential for, either it has an existing ADU, so an accessory dwelling unit, or here it might be on Ohana, or maybe you've got an upstairs, downstairs setup, and really just something that has the potential to be a separate rentable space.
Okay.
It has maybe a separate entry exit, another separate space, let's say for, a bathroom or plumbing or, that kind of deal.
Okay.
Where you can rent it out separately from your main space.
Got it, yeah.
And it can turn into an income generating unit. Now, a lot of people here, of course, they use it for just extended family. You've got multiple generations.
When they come and visit, like, hey, when the grandparents come over, like, hey, at least you have a little spot where we can like house you and things, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. But for us, like I said, we wanted it to be a rentable space.
Okay.
So my minimum was, hey, I want this unit, whatever and however that ends up looking, I want it to cover my monthly housing expense. So that was just our minimum going into a purchase.
So you guys were looking to buy a primary house, and then you wanted to have a house that was big enough where you could rent out a portion of the house that would cover basically what you're paying in your mortgage.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of hard for some people to wrap their head around. I still have friends to this day where it's like, oh, gosh, I can't, you guys you've been sacrificing all these years. And I'm like, well, I don't see it as sacrificing because, once we were able to achieve, covering our mortgage, I'm living for free in Hawaii. Now
so basically you're 100% of your income now, you can use it for whatever you want, either saving, investing, or it's like really the best way to kind of build wealth over a long period of time because like you said, the biggest expense, which is housing, was completely taken out the table, right? So I think we both love Dave Ramsey. He's a great guy, what he teaches and things. But at the same time, like cutting out coffee or the small expenses pale in comparison to just, let's say we can just cut out your mortgage, right? So if you can cut off your mortgage and your car payments, basically like the cutting out coffee is irrelevant at that point, right?
Absolutely. So. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, even if you're let's say, even if you're going to Starbucks every day, right? Like, okay, what is that? Over the course of a month, it's still maybe $200-300.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Like versus, okay, well, my mortgage, let's say at that time, $3,600.
Okay.
So if I can axe $3,600, wow, now I'm making a dent into disposable income that I have every month. Now, am I using that to go pay down, for some people that might be, hey, I'm going to pay down student debt or personal debt, right? Or, hey, maybe I'm saving up for my next investment property.
Or buy a Lambo.
Or whatever you want, right? Like, but that's significant. It's like, now, hey, you know what? Now I don't have to go get a second job or, what kind of pay increase is that for somebody?
I think this is huge for people, especially in Hawaii, because I think when you live let's say in the Midwest in Kansas City and a house is $150,000, your mortgage is like $400 a month, right? But in Hawaii, like where $1 million houses, your mortgage is $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month, which is a huge monthly expense for us, right?
Yeah, no, and I think it's especially important in a high cost of living state like Hawaii, specifically. For one, because not only is your payment going to be that, I mean, especially our current interest rates, right? Like payments are really high, but it's also that initial upfront down payment. And that I think is the challenge that most people have, like into getting into something, is they just don't have, well, hey, how can I save, like $2,000-$3,000 a month, $100,000 to be able to put down on another property? Well, hey, unless you have family member or somebody that's willing to lend you that money or gift you that money, that's a huge obstacle for a lot of people. So, for us, thankfully, we were coming out of another property, so we did have money to be able to put down. But creating that separate income stream, boy, that was huge. So and
walk us through like this property that you're living for free in. How many bedrooms? How many baths? How big was it?
Yeah, sure. So property itself was about 1,850 square foot.
So under 2,000 square feet.
Under 2,000 square foot. Yeah.
How many beds and baths?
Yeah, so it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath.
4-bedroom, 2 baths. Okay.
Correct. So, and we were coming out of a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo.
Okay.
So, a lot of people here are used to condo living too, right? And our square footage is not, I grew up in Texas, so, square footage in Texas, obviously for a single family house, massive compared to anything that we found here. But coming from an 800 square foot condo to go into an 1,800 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, even if I split that in half, which is what we ended up doing.
900 feet, or square feet each.
I'm still living in the same size square footage. So there's really no difference. I now have a yard though, right? So so that house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, over 1,800 square foot. Now, my background, and we'll kind of dive into a little bit of this later if you want. My background, starting in real estate, was I was very used to looking at tax records and walking property, right? So I could immediately walk into a house, and I would have pulled a tax record beforehand, and I'm looking for anything I can take advantage of, right? You can pull up, for those of you guys who aren't familiar, and this is all public record, right? You can go pull up a plat map. You can go pull up, what does the structure of the house look like on public record?
Yeah, we have this here in Hawaii, right? Where you can just go onto like the Hawaii website or the county website. You can see exactly what's on the tax record.
Correct. So one thing that I noticed on this particular property, since we were looking for something that was a multi-generational, multi-family type of setup, it was listed on the tax record as a duplex. But it was being marketed as a single family. It was presented like a single family. So somebody had just renovated it and, had made it just to look just like a single family house. So again, my experience is you being able to walk property. And this is the benefit of you guys, looking at property, just being familiarizing yourself with, hey, plumbing, electric, all that kind of stuff. Location.
This is a really big, important point, I think. So you kind of developed the skill of finding value where it was not so obvious, right? So you're looking at tax records when you're looking at properties. You're seeing where is there some kind of like a discrepancy that I can actually take advantage of, where maybe the listing agent didn't catch this and they're marketing it incorrectly. Maybe they're listed as a lot less square footage than it actually is there, or in this case it was actually a duplex, but they're listed as a single family. So you go in with as a savvy investor, and you can see actually there's a lot more value and opportunity here than what's actually being listed on the market, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we immediately go in, and I'm like, well, there was a kitchen here. There was a door at one point, and I can see it, and I can kind of visualize it walking through. So so we went ahead and bought it, knowing this is the game plan going into it. We can go create another kitchenette or whatever. We can split the house, we can separate the house, and that's what we did. We bought the house, ended up closing on it, did some minor renovation to the property itself.
So you bought it was a little bit of a fixer or something like that, or is it?
Well, actually, and this is, maybe this is something for, your audience. It doesn't have to be a fixer, right? I know typically that's going to be where the most value add potential is for most properties. It's like, hey, we can create value, right? You have sweat equity. The house had just been renovated. So this was already the back end of somebody else's flip or project, right? This was just an untapped potential, an untapped opportunity for this specific property. And again, maybe this wasn't what everybody was looking for, but this is perfect for what I was looking for. Again, because I had a different lens through how I was viewing this property and what I needed from it.
Got it.
So
you guys purchased the thing for, you want to share what you bought it for?
Yeah. So we bought it for $820,000.
So single family, 4-bedroom, 2-bath.
Correct.
1,800 square feet, just under 2,000. You saw it could be set up as a duplex.
Correct.
Then what was the next steps?
So, at that point we went in, started getting our contractor in there to be able to say, okay, well, this is the vision. This is what we want to have happen. Went and split, effectively split the house into 2 units. So now instead of a 4-bedroom, 2-bath single family, it's 2 2-1 units that have separate entrances, separate,
their own
exits,
kitchens, their own
kitchen, their own complete setups, laundry, all that good stuff. And this was even something too, like you guys can, if you're walking property, the house already had two water heaters. For one single family house. So, there was still clues there on site.
And the thing is, like, there's single family houses now even today that have 2 water heaters that were never a duplex, right? There's Ohana units where people are just hey, I want to get my water faster than than my roommate or whoever it is. And so it's just, there's already a lot of houses that are kind of set up where you can easily turn it into a duplex, even if it's actually listed as a single family, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And people do that too. Like if you're wanting to kind of recreate this, it doesn't have to be listed the same way as the way we bought it. I mean, of course, we were able to identify that opportunity, but you can still do this on many properties where you create a separate entry, separate exit, set up, maybe it doesn't have to be a full kitchen. Maybe you put in
a wet bar or something.
Yeah, wet bar. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So we were able to split that property into 2. Did, minor improvements, minor renovation. Didn't have to change any plumbing or electric and that kind of stuff because it was already there. It was really just a matter of identifying it, making the tweaks to, creating the floor plan that we wanted. Now furnishing it, because again, we knew right off the bat we were going to go into it as a Airbnb, like a short-term rental type property. And then funny story to kind of go with this, right? My wife was pregnant during this time. We were expecting our second child.
How many kids do you guys have, by the way?
We have 2 girls. Awesome. So girl dad, ballet dad, pageant dad. So I love my girls. Yeah. But at the time we were expecting our second.
So your wife's what, like 9 months pregnant?
Yeah, my wife's never pregnant.
She's ready to blow.
Oh yeah, she was ready to go. So we're doing renovations and all of that, and so the renovation had been done to the property, and we had furnished it mostly, but there's still, if anybody, of our listeners, right, like there's a lot of setup that needs to go in to make a property livable, right? Like think about any house when you do a move, you've made a move in in your life, right? I'm moving to a new apartment, a new house. There's a laundry list of stuff that you got to do, right? And so, and then also to take it next level, well, now you want a rentable space. So you're thinking, okay, well, what does somebody else need that I may not use? I don't have a TV at my house, but I know, hey, a renter's expectation is, hey, you're going to have a TV, you're going to have, all of these XYZ, right? Like all these small details. So, my wife ends up going into labor as we're in the middle of furnishing the house, setting up the house. So we're at the hospital, and what we didn't realize is, as she's giving birth, I get, for those people that are familiar with Airbnb, I've got the Airbnb app. I get a ping on my phone, and hey, somebody just instantly booked your place. And I'm thinking, what? I'm thinking it's people checking on us. Hey, how's the baby and all of that. But it's a notification that somebody just booked your place, and guess what? They're coming in 2 days.
Wow.
And we're in the hospital delivering, my little one at this point. And at that point, instead of saying, well, this does, I've got to cancel this booking. This is our very first booking, our very first experience with Airbnb. And it was maybe like a $2,000 booking.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a pretty big booking then. So,
right. Yeah. And so it was like, and I got to give all the credit in the world to my wife here too, because I probably would have been like, babe, we got to cancel this thing. But she's like, no, like I'm here, delivering you, you go take care of that. We're keeping this booking.
That's how you have a winner, man. I mean, like your wife's the true MVP. Just giving birth and hey, let's keep running this investing thing and let's keep rolling. I love it, man. So.
Oh yeah. So, I called up a buddy. We went and finished out the unit, did all the touch-up paint, got it ready. And it was literally
to maybe
oh man. I mean, the people were coming at, let's say 4:00 at check-in time. And we were in there, until 3:45, touch up paint, buttoning everything up, putting the sheets on the bed and everything else just in time to get them ready to go.
I've been there before. It's kind of like, it's so, you're so stressed out, like right up to the moment, right? Because there's the adrenaline's running, like, oh, we got to finish this. But I feel like some of the most productive things I've ever done in my life was when there's like a super tight deadline. And so like the guests are coming, we got to go to the store, honey, we got to buy this stuff, we got to get this thing all arranged. And you're just like going like 110 miles per hour just to kind of get the thing over the finish line. And then like boom, once you finish it and like you meet the deadline, you feel like so good, right? Because it's like a huge accomplishment. You did like jammed out so much work and just in the nick of time.
Yeah, it's a good pressure, right? It's not good for us to live under stress, right? Because then you got cortisol and all the mechanics and all the science of that being negative. But it's a good pressure, because then it puts time constraints on what you need to do, and you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish when you actually have a deadline and somebody putting pressure, leaning on you in order to get it done.
I feel like there's like a healthy way to do that and an unhealthy way to do that. But I feel that putting like deadlines on yourself or in your time constraints on yourself, you always like, it's sometimes surprising how much you can accomplish in that time period when you didn't realize. And so like, with always like, so it's just like you have a test for like, let's say like 3 months out or whatever, right? The teacher's like, hey, like study for this test. You're like, okay. 2 months, 1 month, the night before, like, oh crap, I have a test tomorrow. You jam that thing like all night, and then like what should have taken 3 months, you actually take like 1 day or like a few hours. But that pressure to kind of complete it before the deadline, just amazing what we can accomplish as humans just in that short deadline once we have like the right incentives or pressures upon us, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I think something key too, and I've seen this personally, and you know, and then I've seen this in other people's lives too. You start to build momentum. Right. So, you know, body motion tends to stay in motion, body rest tends to stay at rest.
Okay. I like that.
So when people get some momentum going by getting out of your comfort zone, right? Like changing up your routine, getting some momentum. When you see that first win, it's so much easier to roll that into something else, right? Like to get going on another project or whatever, because now you're amped up. Now you're ready. Man, we've been jamming. And then you see how efficient and how productive that you can be. Now well, what else can I do? What else? We need to do more.
It's kind of like it snowballs, right? Because I think someone once said this great quote. It says, confidence is a recent memory of success. So like the more you kind of stack up these wins, you're like, oh, I finished this thing in time. We got this Airbnb up and running. Oh, we can do the next one. Like you put all these different things where you start snowballing. Now you have way more confidence, which allows you to be more productive, which allows you to do more. You get more out of your comfort zone. You're just kind of growing as a person. But it's like this giant snowball where you're just becoming like this monster, this animal to just accomplish and do so much more in your life, right?
Yeah, and I think people undersell themselves on how much they can actually accomplish, right? What kind of skills they actually do have, how much they can actually achieve in their lives. Because when I look back, let's say at the last 5 years, I'm blown away by how much we've been able to do. It's easy to look at the rearview mirror and be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You don't want to stay too long in there, right? It's like while you're driving in the car, the rearview mirror is the size that it is compared to the windshield, because, hey, looking forward to the future is always going to be more productive than just keeping us, that eye on the past. Right. But I think people undersell how much they can actually get done. Because what we've been able to do the last 5 years, it gets me super stoked, super excited for the next 5, and to know, wow, I can actually do more. You know,
what's cool, I think, is just getting around people like you or other people who are really successful, because it kind of opens up your eyes of what you think you can do yourself. I think I had a coach back in high school, tennis coach. Amazing coach, right? But me and my buddies, we joined the tennis team. We were brand new. We didn't really know how to we originally joined the tennis team. We were like, hey, let's get some free tennis lessons, because you have to pay for tennis lessons at a time, right? We were like, hey, let's get some free lessons. So we joined the team. But then our coach is so good. He just had this belief in us. And like, hey, we're going to get you guys to the OIA finals. Like, we're going to win OIAs. And we're like, there's no way. Like, we're brand new, right? But like, just you're like barring the belief of like your coach or whoever is kind of pushing you. And then his kind of like his mindset and the way that he does things, it actually pushes us to achieve way more than we would have without him. And I think having like good peers or good mentors or coaches around you kind of pushes you to kind of achieve way more than you would without those kind of borrowing their faith in yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like one of the things I think that's been really beneficial, obviously I'm a man of faith too. So something I always see like, okay, well, children are a blessing, right? Like children are really stressful, for those of you, like I know you don't have kids yet, right? But with my kids, like something that is shown is like an extra level of patience, but also too, like it gives us a unique perspective, right? Like, okay, well, I know when I'm watching my baby daughter, before she's even crawled, before she's taken her first steps, I know that you're capable of potentially becoming an Olympic athlete, let's say, and running, miles and miles and jumping and doing all this kind of cool stuff. Baby doesn't know that. Right. And so like this is the benefit of having some outside perspective and surrounding yourself with other people, let's say, who are maybe a little further down the road. You don't have to be miles down the road, but even just a few steps down the road to be able to encourage you, let's say as a new investor or even an experienced investor, right? It's just showing you what's possible. Hey, I'm 2 steps down the road. it's not so scary. You can do it too, right? And why don't you try this? Try this little tweak on what you're doing, right? And I still need this too, right? I'm still part of masterminds and groups and all of that. Like, I think it doesn't matter what level of success you reach. There's always somebody that's further down the road, right? There's always somebody that you can go to for additional advice, as from whether they be life advice or business advice or, spiritual advice, like whatever it is that you need, there's always somebody that can help to provide you some additional perspectives, additional insight. And, I think that's huge, especially for people that are like just starting out.
But that's also huge why like people like to like sharing your story is really powerful, because people might not even realize like, hey, I can buy a house and rent out the other side of like the house and actually pay for my mortgage, which number one is an amazing strategy. But number two is like, Steve, he's a normal guy. Like, he figured it out. Like, you're obviously a special dude, but you're not special you're a normal average person, but you've accomplished so many crazy things. 80 million assets under management, probably over $1 billion that you walked in, like inspecting like houses. But just like the track record that you put together is just from the consistent daily action, but just having like taking advantage of the opportunities that's been given to you, right?
So, oh yeah, totally. I mean, for me too, like it's a mindset shift. So like you're reading off like, okay, hey, this is things that I've done. Like to me, it's almost surreal too, because just the background that I had, like I didn't even think it was honestly like, and again, like, to your audience, like listening in, tuning in, all that kind of stuff. I didn't even think it was possible to own one house.
I was exactly, dude.
At 30 years old.
Dude,
at 30 years old.
Dude, it's crazy. I was the exact same way. When I first started, I never wanted to own a house because like it's too expensive in Hawaii. And so I had a couple of buddies who bought a house and like they're living on like ramen every night just to pay their mortgage, because having a mortgage in Hawaii like sucks the life out of you, because if you have to pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, like that's your whole paycheck, It's like you have like no breathing room for anything else. And so that's why I also love the strategy that you're talking about today. But I 100% like know where you're coming from. So yeah,
I mean, I again, and for me, like everything starts with mindset for one. I came from a broken family, so like we were always renters growing up, which is probably something maybe some of the audience can relate to, especially being here in Hawaii, because it is so expensive to be here. So again, broken family. I didn't graduate, high school. Like with my initial graduating class, I went back and kind of finished up. But got involved in all the wrong crowds and all that kind of stuff. But even somebody who even when I started in real estate, I was wholesaling. Hey, I'm glad to provide you a deal. I'm glad to provide you an opportunity. But that's for you.
Because you feel like I wasn't worthy to like take it down myself. So,
No, it's a mindset shift, because I didn't see that for myself. I'm not a homeowner. You can be a homeowner, and I'm glad to provide you a great deal on adding to your portfolio or somebody to buy a house or whatever. But for me, like a lot of that just starts with a mindset shift. And this is also too, where this is the value of community. This is the value of surrounding yourself with people who are more successful or are just doing things that you want to do. Listening to podcasts like this, right? Because this, or shows like this, it could just be, okay, wow, if that person can do it, and I'm just a normal dude, I'm just a normal guy. I didn't come from any money, come from a broken family, all that kind of stuff. Again, didn't even think it's possible to own a house, to now, we do have quite an extensive portfolio of owned property, all over the country.
80 million assets under management. Just like the numbers kind of blow your mind. Or sometimes
the fact that we've been very blessed to have traveled, all over the world. And now I get to pass that mindset on to my daughters, to the next generation. To me, that's huge. Leaving a legacy, right? Like being able to do more with those resources. It's not all about us.
100%. But just even going back to that point, like if you're in your 20s or in your 30s, you're like, those guys can own apartment buildings, like tens of millions of dollars, right? Like it's so far from like your belief what's possible for you. Like it's not even like in the same stratosphere. But now it's like a natural thing. I just own 80 million in assets under management. It's just you're a landlord to like other people who are kind of coming up in the same places that you once were yourself. Right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Which is so interesting. I mean, like I said, it really is surreal. And then again, there's always new levels, right? Because even though we have that much AUM, right, assets under management, and we're buying 50 to 100 unit apartment buildings. Well, guess what? Like there's people down the road that are buying 2, 3, 4, 500 unit complexes like at a time, right? Buying, bigger class properties in different markets.
And right now you probably feel like that's for them and not for me, right? Like it's
a different, it is different, but again, there's that next mental shift, right? There's that next mental jump. Yep. And you got to see it. Okay, well, is that for me? Can I do that? Right. So again, back to value of community, back to value of, surrounding yourself with people who are a little further down the road, just a little bit. They don't need to be miles down the road.
Yeah. I think that's also a good point is whenever you when you surround yourself with people who are like so far ahead of you, you feel like you can't relate to them because like they're still in a different stratosphere. But when you're around people who are like, hey, they're 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, like, hey, I feel like I can reach that level because like you're like just a few steps ahead of me. And so when you're in that room, it's like I feel like a lot more productive or a lot more helpful for you because you're like, you start to believe you can do a little bit more because these guys have done a little bit more than you,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes it practical, right? It's attainable. It's like, okay, well, maybe I can't put together $100,000, to go buy put down payment on a property. Okay, well, maybe you're renting right now. Yeah. Can you rent out a room? Can you go, is there something else that you can do? Can you go rent out a car and, put it on Turo, right? I can afford a couple $100 of a car payment on, getting a loan on a vehicle. Can I rent that out? Yeah. Is there a side hustle that I can pick up? Do I have another skill set that I can do? And again, all these little small wins, they may not make a huge impact in the short term, but can I stack some of these small wins, start building some momentum?
Get some confidence, some snowball, the momentum, and then to eventually get to the point where, hey, now I own like 80 million or whatever it is that your bigger goals are, right?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, and again, other people start to see that too, right? And so like as people start to see that, then that creates new opportunities. And then once you have those small wins and you have those successes, well, guess what? People want to partner with that, right? Yeah. People also want that in their lives, right? Yeah. Now you start to also see opportunities as you build momentum. Well, what else can I do? What else can I do? Right? Okay, man, wow. And everything starts to become an opportunity versus like, oh, that's not for me. That's for other people. There's no opportunity here. It's so expensive. It's cost of living here. I can never buy a house. To like, no, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do to build momentum, to ramp up? And okay, great. Then you get more, momentum going. You got more resources, more capital. Just build.
It's very easy to kind of get in the mindset of like, woe is me or complaining, right? They call it the victimhood, right? And I think like I've been I've done it in my past. I probably still do it to this day. But there's certain times when, like, let's say we complain about the cost of living in Hawaii, which is stupid, by the way. But then it's like if you come from a mindset of like, oh, it's so expensive, like I can't do anything with my life, versus like it's so expensive, how can I overcome this? And so I think that slight shift is I can first. How can I, right? I think that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, like that slight switch of I can't to how can I? And it just starts to get your brain moving in kind of a different direction where you're like, I can't afford a house in Hawaii, or how can I afford a house in Hawaii? And like this, going back to your story of just how you guys actually did it living for free. We still have to finish this up, but I just think like this, that slight change in the way that you phrase things or see things will make a big difference in what you do and how much you can accomplish in life, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was a huge shift for me too, right? Everybody, I mean, of course I would expect, if you're listening or watching this and you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad or listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad, no excuse, right? And then there's so many other books that we go out there, but again, that comes back to your mindset, right? Like Tony Robbins talks a lot about this too, right? Like increasing your standards, like leveling up, like your expectations, like your standards, right? Like my expectation going into buying that particular house was like, no, my minimum is I want to live for free. I may not cash flow, but I want to live for free. Well, gosh, that already adds right off the bat $3,500 a month, let's say, to my income, right? Because effectively, hey, if I'm not paying it, that's income, right? It's not going out of my pocket. It's coming into my bank account.
100%, yeah.
So
plus, it's like you're getting the income, but it's also building wealth for you because your mortgage is being paid down. There's a whole bunch of other crazy things that are happening while you're house hacking, right? So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so like, again, it's like your expectations, right? What do you see out of life? What do you want out of life? If you see that there's no opportunity everywhere and it's so expensive and I don't know how anybody can live here and I'll never be able to afford, guess what? You won't. Yeah. It will be expensive for you. And it doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the fact that, milk is as expensive as it is, or gas is expensive as it is, or whatever. But your mode of being able to visualize and see, well, hey, but there's ways that I can afford that, or somebody else can help me to pay that, or the ways that I can offset how expensive it is. It's not taking away the reality of it, but there's things that I can do on my end to level up my ability to be able to afford that and to provide for my kids and sit them and create better opportunities for them and my family and my community, right? There's ways to level up to do it. So it's just a matter of changing your perspective, changing your mindset. I mean, it's so huge.
I love that. Okay, so back to the story about the house hack.
Yeah.
The Airbnb, what made you guys choose Airbnb over, let's say, like a long-term renter or a mid-term rental?
Yeah, I mean, we had traveled quite a bit. So very blessed to have traveled pretty extensively, even before I feel like a lot of the financial success. My wife grew up overseas, and so for her, it was kind of normal to travel like internationally. So she came to this country from the Philippines. So she grew up half there and half in Hong Kong. And so like I had already at least been able to travel to those places because she had family there and whatnot. But again, that provides a different perspective, right? So, and we had just been used to staying in Airbnb. So we were like, okay, at that time, we're like, well, hey, you know what if, and I don't think we even really knew anybody that was doing it at that time. Yeah. It wasn't like the super popular thing that it's been the last couple of years, but we knew we saw that as an opportunity. So yeah, we went that route. And two, like we just figured, okay, well, look, these people are not going to be here long, so it doesn't lock us into a long-term tenant if they're a bad tenant if they're a bad tenant or whatever. Like if I've got a long-term renter living directly next to me and I'm sharing a wall, not that that's any different than if you were in a condo or something like that. Yeah. But now that it's under my control, okay, I want to be able to control a little bit of that, and at least they're paying a premium and they're not going to be here long. So that was kind of I think how we saw it as we were going into it. So the Airbnb really worked out. So not only were we covering our living expense at that point, right? So let's say $3,500, right? That's what our mortgage was. So we were able to, I think at our peak during that time, we were making probably about $7,000 a month gross.
$7,000 on your Airbnb.
On the one unit.
Wow. So like you're living in a 2-1 on one side. Your mortgage is $3,500 a month. Yep. There's a 2-unit on the right next to you, part of the same house. At its peak in Airbnb, you're making $7,000 a month.
Yeah, at that time for a short-term rental, right? Now, obviously, legislations change and kind of all that kind of stuff. Regulations change, so we did have to pivot, after a little bit. But then what we did was transition to what we call midterm. So so those are the listeners that may not be familiar. People kind of watching. It's basically just 30 days plus, right? A lot of specifically on island. Right, like that's a minimum, right? Month-to-month rentals, right? Because now you're really talking. That's potentially long-term tenants too, right? They lease month-to-month. So we transitioned, pivot to that. Still kind of a similar operation. It's still a furnished unit. It's midterm, and then so income does drop there because you're just not able to turn anywhere as quick. But it's also a lot less work. Right. So there is some
less check-ins, less cleaning, less kind of like handling with what guests need and things.
Yep. So we've done that, I think, pretty successfully. So went from $7,000 a month to maybe $4,500 to $5,000.
Well, which is still amazing. I mean, like the fact that you're living for free, plus you're getting another like grand on the side for just like whatever like food or whatever thing is. It's almost like, theoretically, if you're a super frugal person, you could just quit your job almost, right? Like you have your housing paid for, and then you got like a little bit of cash on the side where you can like actually live. I mean, it's such a powerful strategy for anybody who's just starting out, especially like in Hawaii, I think. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that did actually allow my wife to stay home with our daughter. That was something that she always wanted to do, didn't realize how much of a motherly instinct that she had until after we had our first one. And it was just never a reality for us, right? Because again, housing expense here in Hawaii is so expensive, right? Well, I want to be able to be a stay-at-home mom, but how can I do that? Yeah. Right? And again, back to your comment earlier. Well, it's like, well, I can't do that. To well, how can I do that? Yeah. Well, guess what? Here's an opportunity. Here's an option for you to be able to do that. Being able to just get rid of your housing expense effectively. Boy, what kind of? And even if you don't need to stay at home, maybe you enjoy your job and you want to continue to work. Like, wow, what kind of burden does that take off of you?
Yeah. Just like from the weight of like having to like pay your bills every month, right? I mean, but I think it's also really good because, I mean, very amazing that I think real estate investing in general, and I consider this real estate investing, even though it's kind of like your primary house, it allows us to have time freedom. And I think there's nothing like that in the world where there may be someone maybe like crypto or like, I think you got to get a little lucky, etc. But I think there's nothing in the world that kind of provides that ability for you to have freedom of time while you're building wealth together, right? And so it's just like that, just a simple thing like a house, like by just renting out the room that you of your primary house. Now your wife gets to like quit her job and move home. She has the freedom to raise your kids. Now you have less pressure as a husband and a provider to kind of like make sure you're covering like your mortgage. There's just so many things that kind of go along with that. Just that simple decision to just invest a little bit on the real estate on the side.
Can I say too, guys, for those of the husbands and the guys listening out, think about what that does to your relationship, to your marriage, right? When, if your wife or your significant other, your spouse, and this could be from either way, right? Like husband or wife. If you take that stress, right? If you're going to work every day, man, I freaking hate my job, but I can't leave because my monthly mortgage is $5,000 a month. Yeah. And, we got to buy groceries and, we got to send the kids to school and all this kind of stuff. Well, think of how much stress that relieves off of your relationship, off of your, your life in general, right? Okay, well, now you can start, maybe you're not an investor yet. Maybe you can start socking away some of that money, paying down debt, building up your savings account, building up your savings reserve, taking some trips, right? So like, you mentioned it earlier, having that time freedom. Guess what? Like for the first, however many decades of most people's lives, you're trading your time for money.
Yeah.
And what we, long to achieve, most of us are investors, is like eventually you get to the point where you're like, well, I'm just trying to buy my time back.
Yeah.
The older you get, especially too, like I'm turning 45 here this month. So, I start thinking, wow, and that's 5 years away from 50, so you start to understand, wow, my years really are numbered. You start to become more cognizant of that. Well, I want to spend more time with my kids. Oh, I want to have more time to travel or to do the things that I want, right? Not to have to go to work. And I enjoy my work, so I still do it. But I don't have to do it if I don't want to.
There's a big difference between having to go to work and choosing to go to work. And I think as humans, we're created for work. I think it's healthy for us, whether it's work at a job or work with like a stay-at-home mom. That's still like a job, like technically. But I'm just saying, like, we're made to do things and be productive. I think it's very healthy for our souls, for our psyche, for our emotions. But there's a big difference between like working because you have to and working because you want to. It's a completely different ballgame.
Oh, absolutely. And you can't think about that too, guys. If you're not going to work every day stressed out because I'm like, man, I got to pay my my mortgage and I got to pay all the bills, and you just show up like all grumpy and all upset or whatever. How much more productive are you? And you just doing your job.
Yeah.
How much, are you nicer to your coworkers and to all the people that are surrounding you just because I don't have that added stress? I don't have that cortisol pumping through my veins and, stressing me out and putting me in a bad mood and causing pain and causing sickness and cancer and all this kind of junk. No, you're in a good mood. Hey, wow. Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, happy Monday. It's a beautiful new week. It just changes your overall, I think, perspective. And again, it starts with a mindset shift.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally true. I think, and so like, I think there's a lot of benefits to like investing in real estate, not just money wise, but also like your quality of life, right?
Totally.
Like that's the amount of stress you have, just like your security for the future too. I think that's another big one where you don't feel like there's no end in sight. But I think so like now that you have like this little unit you're renting on the side of your primary house, eventually maybe you can sell this, buy another house and then rent out both sides. You make a little bit more cash flow, do the exact same thing over and over every few years. Now you have built-in retirement. And I think that's huge because a lot of us, and like when we're trying to save in our 401k, like it probably took me like 10 years to save like $100,000 in my 401k. I mean, obviously I wasn't contributing to like super regularly, but like it's so hard to save in your 401k over like a long period of time, especially if you are barely making enough to kind of survive in Hawaii, So
totally.
Just real estate investing or general, like just like the simple strategy of house hacking and doing the same thing every few years, like it allows you to build a retirement and a security net for you when you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and all this time too, you're building equity, you have debt pay down, right? All the benefits that come with, like, let's say home ownership. But two, then, you're leveraging your hard work up to that point. If you're taking care of your credit, right? Like, you have a solid W-2 history because you're working, your 9 to 5. Great. Leverage all of that, right? And I don't need to tell you this. You're the master of the BRRRR, here, right? Like creating value and leveraging debt and all that kind of stuff to be able to do that. But again, like that sets you up for other things, right? Whatever you want to do, right? If you want to grow a massive portfolio, awesome. Now you have a game plan that you can do that, right? You could literally just do that over and over and over and over and over again, create total financial freedom, create value in the marketplace, right? And you could be good. Like there's your game plan right there, guys. If this is all you want to do and that's all I think you take away from listening to, this episode, You can house hack, BRRRR, and just repeat that process like over and over and over. Again, I didn't necessarily, even though I knew how to do it, and initially I was trying to buy below market. I bought it at retail. I just had to recognize the opportunity. It
worked for your situation, right?
It worked for my situation because I was willing to come at it, looking at it from a different angle. Everybody else was seeing that as just like that house. Well, it's a retail house. Like there's no opportunity there. Yeah, the work has already been done. The value's already been created. It was rehabbed. No, there's way more opportunity here. So like, again, so you don't have to necessarily go out and learn how to do that if you don't want to. If you can do that, hey, now we get to double dip.
Supercharge, right?
Yeah, it's going to supercharge. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, now that, that particular property, let's say is grown, hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, in equity. Like it's probably worth, even in this kind of depressed market that we're in right now, it's easily still worth, probably 1.2 plus.
Wow. Okay. So but how long ago did you guys buy this house?
We bought it in 2019. So a lot happened for us in I take that back. It was 2018.
Okay, wait. So like let's think through these numbers a little bit. It's crazy to kind of imagine, right? So you bought a house for $850, $840, $820. Okay, $820. What was your down? Like you can put like 3% down, right? So let's say
you could, yeah. I mean, it was if you want to go that route. We ended up putting 20% down, just to avoid PMI, and we had the capital at that point. You can definitely get into properties for less expensive than that, 3.5%, 5%, whatever. If you're going to
let's just take like the what another person could do, like maybe not necessarily your guys, but you buy a house for $820 at 5% down, which is like 40 grand ish, right? So 50 grand as a down payment. So you buy this house, your initial investment is 50 grand. You own a house that's worth $820, and then like you're renting out one side, right, for $5 grand a month, and your mortgage is only $3,500. So you're living for free, making $1,000 a month on the side. So over every year you make, let's say, like $12,000 a month, $12,000 a year in just cash flow. Your mortgage balance is going from whatever, let's say like 800 to like 750, like it's slowly going down. So like you have more equity in the house, right? So over the next 5 years, your balance might be paid down from like an $800,000 loan to maybe, let's say, like a $720,000 loan. So you mean like it's like 80 grand just like equity in that house, right?
We're being simplistic here, guys.
Yeah. And then so it's super simple terms, right? And then over the next 5 years, you actually gained value of the house appreciating. So now it's worth 1.2 million. So your loan is only, let's say, $700,000 at that point in time. Your house is worth $1.2 million. Plus, you've been like getting about $12,000 a month in cash flow every year, which is another $100,000. So like you basically made $600,000 on your $50,000 investment over 5 years, doing nothing. And that's the crazy thing is like you're not doing anything. You're just doing nothing, and you made 600 grand over 5 years. And like just the thought of being able to do something like that is just the numbers are there. It's insane. Now you can take that 600 and buy another house or buy 10 houses, whatever it is you want to do it, reinvest in the stock market and real estate, whatever it is, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, just think of it too, guys, right? Like it's like when let's say you're just renting, you don't own anything, right? You're fighting multiple factors. You're a fish swimming upstream. You're fighting the current. Because the value of the currency is being devalued, right? Because we have there's all kinds of, you always hear that in the news today, right? Like you have inflation, right? Well, that's the purchasing power of your dollar being eroded, is what it is. All right. So now you have an asset that hedges against inflation, right? So now not only is your money not worth less, it's actually worth your assets are worth more because it's fighting that inflation. The value of your property is going to increase to the level of the amount of inflation that's happening, right? So you have that working for you. Now you have that additional income again too that you can go back and take and do something else with. You want to put it in your 401k. Awesome. Guess what? That's going to continue to grow. Right. If you want to go pay down debt, awesome. Then that's not just, again, there's that much less stress that's working against you in your daily life. Right. So there's just like so many benefits that you can take, from just that simple mindset shift, just having that simple perspective shift that like, hey, I can do something beyond just renting or putting my money down the drain and not being creative. And again, we had to buy, not that particular house, but to buy the first property that we bought, man, we scratched and clawed and borrowed we borrowed against retirement accounts and we borrowed money from family, everything just to scratch and put together, a $35,000 down payment.
The first one is always the hardest, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just to get into the game, it's always like there's so many obstacles to overcome. Like you don't know how to navigate these things. That's why maybe having a great lender or a real estate agent to kind of help you really helps you to kind of like navigate in the very beginning. But just, it's so difficult to get started. But once you get started, it's so much fun to kind of continue and to kind of build momentum upon that initial like win.
Absolutely. I mean, again, remember, it's like body at rest tends to stay at rest. So to get that body off of being just at a standstill into some kind of movement, that takes the most amount of fuel and effort, right? It's like getting a plane off of the ground. How much of the fuel, like percentage, I don't remember, it's like 80% of the fuel or even more.
For rockets, right? Like
I mean, even just a commercial jet, right? Just to get it up in the air, it burns most of the fuel just upon takeoff, right? And then once it actually gets to getting some momentum, gets to a cruising speed, then it can kind of coast way easier, right? You're not burning that much fuel just to maintain, right? But it's that upfront effort. It is going to take you guys getting out of your comfort zone, right? And whatever facet that is, right? Whether that is borrowing and clawing and, finding whatever opportunity. But as you start to build momentum, it does get easier because then you get experience, then you get, those things working for you as well. It's just that much better.
Love it. So being like an inspector and having inspected thousands of houses and units over the course of your career, what are some things people need to watch out for when they're either buying a house or buying an investment property, like just from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, the key stuff, I mean, like, a lot of concern, like, what we've seen, like in our investing, both, buying personal property, investing, and went over the years, plumbing is always a huge one, right? We see a lot of property in an island. Hey, if it's built in the 60s, right? There was like a housing boom during that period. So we see a lot of older properties. So plumbing can be a significant expense. Right. So cast iron plumbing a lot of times, and everything's got a shelf life, right? Everything's got a usable lifespan, right? So that's always a big one. Roofing, of course, right? You're just thinking big ticket items, right? Like plumbing, HVAC, electrical, roof. Those are typically the kind of the big ticket items.
Have you guys ever seen any kind of crazy like setups as far as like when you guys are inspecting a house?
Well, I mean, I'll share one story just from this was actually a commercial acquisition that we were looking at. We ended up passing on, but it did cost us money, right? Even just to exit from that, being in escrow with this particular property. 100 unit commercial building, right? Multifamily building in Texas. So we did go into this property, and I walk up on site. We're doing due diligence there. I'm looking at the property, so you evaluate everything as a whole. And again, I'm looking at the same things that I'm telling you guys, right? I can get much more granular because I know exactly what I'm looking for. But I start to see red flags almost immediately because I see if you're walking around a house typically or building, you'll see what they call cleanouts. And these are just ways for plumbers to be able to get a snake down a drain. I get hair clogged in my drain or what, roots or whatever. Got to be able to clear it. Okay, well, let's take this cap off and let's go ahead and get a snake or something down there to be able to clear whatever the blockage is. Well, I started seeing where it looks like, a bunch of random cleanouts at the side of this building. And it just kind of it looked odd right off the bat. Now, again, somebody looking at the building may have been like, well, the building looks fine. Brickwork looks good. Roof looks good. Hey, the seller is saying they just changed it, 5 years ago. So it's like, surface level looks really good. So come to find out, okay, well, this particular property had copper drain lines, which is already kind of unusual. So what we had already seen was a number of these copper drain lines had started to collapse. So what they were starting to do was bypass. They were punching to exterior walls to bypass, let's say, kitchen drains into plumbing that they had routed already outside and down to kind of the lateral lines out to like the sewer main. But I started seeing lots of caps. I can tell it wasn't done very well. And they probably hired the maintenance guy or somebody just to kind of come up with a workaround. Because they're calling rooter every other day to try and come clear a blockage. It's never going to go away. Okay, so again, so immediate red flag. Right. So, we ended up getting, plumbers out there to try and get us a bid. Well, hey, we're still in our due diligence period. So, right, we're still in the period of time where we can do our homework on the property. Right. So we're getting active bids out there from plumbers. Well, bids, for one, they took a delay to get out there. It's a small market. So not everybody can work on a project of that size in this market. So this is where you're doing homework on a market. Take that into consideration. If you're doing work on a property, make sure that you're mindful of where it's at. Are there resources to service whatever it is that I'm trying to buy?
Especially when you're going out of state, I think when you kind of stray from the main metros, if you're in the big city, you have like a lot of tenants, you got a lot of property managers, you got a lot of contractors. Once you kind of go to the outskirts, now you have like less tenants, less contractors, contractors, less property managers. And so that can shoot yourself in the foot if you just got like unlucky, bad set of tenants or property managers or contractors in that area, right?
Correct. Yeah. And this was the case. It was like, oh, it's Texas. You know, there should be somebody. It's like, yeah, but it's just a small town in Texas.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is the biggest fish in the, you know, in the town.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's just not that many resources to service it. So we had to draw, you know, get plumbers from like hours away for them to come out and try to bid on this job. Well, we started getting bids back. It took us beyond. I mean, this was a mistake on our part, and this was pretty early on. But again, learn from my mistake. Don't do this. We went beyond our
inspection period.
Okay. Right? So now our earnest money is at risk, right? Like the money that we put down.
How much was our earnest money at this point?
I mean, thankfully at this point, I think we were on that particular one. We were out like $50,000. So
well, I mean, that's not just
it's not insignificant. It's not, but it's far less than what we're doing now, right? Like on other projects. So it's $50,000. And so the bids start coming back in, and it's like $1 million.
Wow. Okay.
$1 million plumbing repair.
Wow.
Right. So you're thinking, wow, like,
That's
okay.
expensive plumbing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, part of it was, again, because this is kind of in a remote area, so to speak.
Yeah. So they can charge whatever they want, kind of basically. So.
Yeah, because again, who else are you going to get? You know, local Joe Blow plumber. Yeah. It's far beyond the scope of what he can do.
Yeah.
So if you got to bring a big firm coming from an outside city, a major metro, have them come out hours, and they're going to have to spend, weeks, if not maybe a month or longer on site. Guess what? You're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, we ended up losing, our EMD.
Grand.
We tried to go back to negotiate with them and say, hey, sounds like you guys maybe potentially knew about this. You obviously have having plumbing issues. We're going to need $1 million off of the asking price.
Yeah.
Well, we can't do that. Yeah. Okay. Well, then we don't have a deal.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that means at that point, we were out our EMD.
I mean, that's like a little sore learning lesson. $50,000 is a joke, man. But.
Yep. Still remember the exact name of the property and all that kind of stuff. And this is several years ago now. But again, all of our partners, like we all still have that sting because we felt that comes out of our pocket.
Sometimes like the best learning lessons are the ones that hurt the most, right? It's like totally. If it didn't hurt you, like you don't really learn the lesson. But if it was sore, you're like, okay, I'm never gonna do that again because that's really hurt me, like hurt my pocket or whatever.
Absolutely. And so now, like for us, as a learned lesson, right? And we were raising capital for this particular deal. So it's like, okay, well, hey, look, I'm not going to go into a deal with somebody else's investor capital on the line, knowing that we're potentially going to have issues here, right? We weren't willing to push the deal. But so that's one of those things. Now, ever since that property, we get sewer scopes on all of our potential acquisitions.
Sure, because
I don't care.
Yeah,
it's got plastic plumbing. It's got modern PVC or ABS drain lines or whatever. We're putting a camera down the drain. I don't care. And we've still run into so many issues and avoided so many potential problems, and now you have a bargaining chip, point of leverage to be able to go back and say, hey, look, I've got you've got a couple of collapsed drain lines here, some bellies in some of the plumbing, or you got root intrusion or something along those lines. Again, that's just extra ammo that you have to be able to go and negotiate a potential discount.
That's a really good point. I think I'm gonna actually have to add that to our repertoire, because I think right now when we're buying some things, it's not like a requirement to go do a sewer scopes. But after hearing this story from you, I think I'm going to do the wise thing and learn from other people's mistakes. And so I think going forward, we're going to put sewer scopes in all of our commercial buildings. Just to be sure.
And honestly, it doesn't cost very much. You can hire a local plumber to do it. This is obviously in the mainland, so this is not here locally. If you're there locally, you can buy a camera, right? You can buy a relatively inexpensive one. You can go rent one of these guys from like Home Depot. But if you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to mess around with that kind of stuff. I totally get it. I've done this, so it's not an issue for me. But you can easily pay a local plumber, and that's a part of what we just write into our budget for due diligence during that period. Yep, I don't even care. We're getting a plumber out there to go put a camera down the drain and see if we've got any issues.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So good. So if somebody who's just kind of like getting started, or they want to, they see the Steve Fierros of what you've accomplished and like hearing about your story about your house hack and living for free, what kind of advice would you give them to kind of take that first step on their journey? Yeah,
I mean, a big one is, for one, look, if you're already hearing this, then that's already a step forward. That's already a step in the right direction, right? You're learning from people that are further down the road, right? Like Daniel, super experienced, right? Like, doing flips and doing commercial acquisitions and, doing burst strategy and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I have the things that I've done as well. You can glean from our experience, right? Like even just hearing these stories, hopefully you learned something already, or a potential opportunity that you can take advantage of.
Get a sewer scope when you're looking at
house hack,
house, right?
Sewer scope, right? Like there's a couple of little quick tips. So that's one thing, right? But I would also, of course, like change your mindset, start working on your mindset. One of the key things that I have always, or that not that I've always done, but that was something significant for me is I got rid of our TV. We don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV in the last 2 houses that we've had, right? And I know people are like, okay, well, TV, that's goofy. Well, guess what? Like the way that I always saw, or the way that I started to see it was, look, what are you going to see on the TV? You're going to see news, right? Yeah. Okay, well, most of that stuff is all salacious stuff. It's all just bad news anyways. Okay, well, I don't need that. I don't need to feed myself that, right? For one. 2, if you're watching a movie or something else, and again, I'm not opposed to watching an occasional movie or that kind of stuff, but I'm also watching somebody else's vision play out on the screen. Well, guess what? If I want to go create something for myself and something for my family, I want to go create my own vision, right? I want to see that play out on the screen of my life, right? So I don't have time to, continue to feed myself only watching somebody else's dreams. And that's what TV, that's what movies and all that kind of stuff is. I don't have time for that, right? So not only improve yourself by, reading books, work on your mindset, start to create a compelling vision for your own life. Start to surround yourself with people who want to see you win. Guess what, guys? You got a lot of people in your life that are, kind of the crabs in the bucket. If, people are familiar with that, if they start to see you kind of crawling out of the bucket, so to speak, the other crabs start to kind of pull down and pull you back down. Well, you think you're too good for us? And so you really have to be mindful of the relationships that you surround yourself with. Right. So that's just something practical. And then 2, I would take an evaluation, do a self-evaluation. What kind of skills do I currently have? Maybe that you're doing in your 9 to 5. Yeah. Okay. Well, have you picked up maybe you're doing accounting or something. Okay. Well, cool. Well, can I do maybe books? Is that something that I enjoy? Are you a numbers person? Hey, maybe I can start to underwrite some deals or kind of learn the numbers side of the business. Well, hey, maybe you're a maintenance guy. Maybe you can pick up inspections or doing something like that, or property management. Like, hey, these guys are always looking for maintenance people. That makes or breaks deals a lot of times. So take a self-inventory. Like, well, what kind of skills do I already have?
And what do you enjoy doing too? What do I enjoy doing? What are you good at, and what kind of gives you life when you do it? I think whenever we're operating in our passion or our superpower, it just brings us more energy. There's certain things that suck energy, and there's certain things that give you energy. So when you're kind of evaluating what you want to be doing as part of the team member, you're like, what's bringing me energy and what do I enjoy doing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because what you'll find is even if you're making money and you're successful using, let's say, something that you can do, it may not be what you should do. It may be soul sucking still. Maybe you're willing to put up with that for a season, but I wouldn't lock yourself into it because you're going to hate it. You're always going to fight against it. And you want to fight, or you want to work with something that you're gifted at, that you're good at, you enjoy doing, because that will be something that you want to continue to build on.
And you can do it for a long period of time, right? And you basically never get tired of it, right? So
it's not work. And then it becomes, again, once you have some financial freedom and you're working in, let's say, your skill set, working in your giftings, it's not work at that point. It's just enjoyable. Right? You can show up and I'm like, I'm glad to do it. Let's do it. It's fun.
100%.
Right. So there's a couple of things I would think somebody can do just if they're trying to get started, trying to build some momentum.
Great advice. Well, if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you, Steve?
I started trying to do more on Instagram. So SG Fierros, you can find me there. Locally here, if you guys are interested in multifamily, interested in networking, or just kind of, again, starting to meet some of the general partner team. You don't even have to be interested in multifamily, although that's what our focus is on. We do have a local meetup, Honolulu Multifamily and More. We have it every month. We just had one meetup. We're going to have one, already scheduled for next month. So you can find us on meetup.com. You can find it usually posted on Bigger Pockets. Join the Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. So we'd love to, meet you. It's an awesome location, beautiful location. I know you've been out there before.
Excellent meetup. You guys run a good one. It's one of my favorite ones just because you guys always provide a lot of information as well as the networking. So I just always feel like I'm learning something new whenever I go to your guys' meetup. So you guys do a good job with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can also check us out on our podcast. So I'm a host, of a podcast as well. So it's called The Cash Flow Project. So one word, cash flow. So you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really wherever, you're listening to your podcast, you can find us there.
Shucks, I want to talk to you about that later. But then we were kind of running out of time over here. But there's another comment. Just love to see your experience because you guys interview a lot of different investors. You guys have talked to so many different people. So I feel like whenever I have another guest on, I always learn something new, or just there's always an interesting insight that I glean. So I'm assuming that the same thing for you as you're interviewing these hundreds of guests that have been on your podcast. You must have been a lot of interesting characters there, but maybe we'll talk off shop or something on this, do another episode. So
for sure. But you can find me on any one of those platforms. If you guys have questions, you can reach out to sgfproperties at Gmail. And, you know, glad to answer any questions, provide some feedback on whatever it is you're working on. If you need an inspection here locally, commercial, residential, glad to help on that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, bro. Appreciate having you on.
Hey, appreciate you. Thanks, Daniel.